It is the Anfield Wrap in association with RedsBet. RedsBet partnering with the Anfield Wrap in 2018. They are the bookmaker who give 50% of their profits, your losses, to Liverpool fan-related causes. If you are someone who gambles, please consider doing so through RedsBet. If you're not, that's not for you. And do always, regardless, be gamble aware. Mike Nevin, Rob Gutmann, Adam Smith, Kristian Walsh to talk about Liverpool 4, Cardiff City 1. And I'm going to start actually talking about Cardiff. I wouldn't normally do this. Rob Gutmann, I think they are the poorest Premier League side I've seen in memory, to be honest with you. I'm not saying they're the poorest ever. I'm not going to go down that route. I can't be sure about that. But they're certainly the poorest I've seen turn up to Anfield. I think that's something which may not have come over to people, even if they were watching the game fully on a stream, as to exactly how poor they were. And I think that's a compliment to their manager, because he's got up, for me, he has managed to get promoted with a mid-table championship side at best.
Yeah, it is a bit of a silk purse out of a sow's ear, this one. I did a little bit of... I paid them the respect of doing some research on them before writing a preview piece. I mean, you had to do it at some point, didn't you? Oh, I know. I was digging deep. I found out who was injured. I found group of lads I'll never meet again, and never heard of since or before. But they did win last week. So if they're the worst in Premiership history, Fulham are coming up on the rails. I thought
I've conceded 28 goals in 10 games,
which is a world record since the beginning of time, I believe. To be strict about it, yeah, I don't. The funny thing is, you say this. The funny thing is, Liverpool are pretty decent these days, and we make a lot of teams look like the way Cardiff look. So whether they're going to be that shit or not, they're going to get to look that shit, and that's within the context of not the most vintage Liverpool 4-1 victory of all time. So. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you whilst wanting you not to say that again, because I think you're damning Liverpool with something.
Don't worry, I'm going to damn Liverpool with a lot more. Adam Smith, it was a game where I thought Liverpool get the early goal. It's the thing that you say you want. We all say, you know what, we just need it. We just need to get an early goal. We get it. There's then a mad kerfuffle, and I'm going to let you talk about the referee, Adam. I know you like to do that. There's a mad kerfuffle where Liverpool should probably get a penalty and/or their goalkeeper gets sent off. I think I'm right in saying. And then from there, not that much happens. I think that's the frustrating part, is that Liverpool go into almost play in front of Cardiff a little bit in that first period.
Yeah, I think the thing with the goalkeeper, I've watched it a couple of times, and I still can't really see whether he touched it with his hand or his foot. So I can see how he doesn't get sent. I can absolutely understand that, because I don't think it's clear as day what happens. The thing with the defender, it's mental that it's not a penalty. He puts two arms underneath his armpits and drags him to the floor. It's a penalty. It's just that it's not even like, I mean, especially in the context of seeing the penalty that Manchester United got yesterday when a player won the ball. It's absolutely insane. And I think, I'm not going to talk about the referee, because I just think it's got to the point now where it's just ridiculous. But I do think that Jurgen Klopp needs to start talking about it, because this is very reminiscent of, I think it was 13-14, wasn't it, when we were singing "We're Gonna Have a Party" when Suarez gets a pen? Was that 13-14?
It was the season before.
Where we just weren't getting penalties for anything at all. And Tottenham have had more penalties at Anfield than Liverpool since the beginning of last season, and that's fine if we're a team that doesn't really get in the box very much, or those sorts of things. But we're in the box all the time. Even on the law of averages, it's mental that Tottenham have had more penalties than we have at home. And so I think it's got to the point where we started getting penalties when the cops started singing "We're going to have a party" when Suarez gets a pen. And then we became penalty pool. We were getting a penalty every week, and everyone was going, "Oh my God, Liverpool never stopped getting penalties." And we're going to continue having stonewall penalties denied until the manager or the cop takes it into their own hands and starts doing something about it, because it's absolutely bonkers.
What I think on this, Mike, I think there is an element... and listen, maybe I'm wrong, and I don't like to talk about referees, but I think you can talk about referees after you've won 4-1 in a game where, it could and probably should have been more. The gulf between the two sides was massive. So let's do that. Let's say this now. We're not saying the referees affected the impact, the result of the game or anything like that. So we can say, one of the things I just think at times with watching the referee in this season, certainly at Anfield, is it almost feels like it's refereeing of an under-11s game where one side's significantly better than the other. And it's almost like the referees are going, well, we've got to give them a chance. We can't give them everything. You're like, well, just give what's in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy enough to say. And I also think that there's still this thing about referees where Anfield's the one place where you can come and prove yourself a little bit as a ref, that isn't leaned on too easily by the crowd. Now, on Saturday, there wasn't a massive atmosphere. So it was so easy for him to give that penalty. Why he does it, I've no idea. I think, is it over a year, I think, since we've had a penalty in the league at Anfield, which just seems remarkable, as says the amount of time we spend in the box. To think that no foul has been committed on a Liverpool player during that period is beyond conception.
Kristian Walsh.
Yeah, I saw a statistic yesterday after Crystal Palace's 2 penalties, and they've had more penalties than any other team since, X whatever year, which when you think about how much time they spend in the penalty box compared to Liverpool is fascinating. I think Bournemouth were up there in the top 3 as well. So I think Neil's point about an under-11s game, it does feel like, come on, I know, you're so much better than these, so I'm not going to give you a hand as well. But ultimately, it's the laws of the game. It should be allowed. I've seen a number of Stonewall penalties denied at Anfield. It is very frustrating.
I've seen City denied a few, where I think there was a period around about sort of February last year where when you're watching City games closely and you're going, that's just a pen. But because they're so on top, you feel like the referees go, we'll be back in the box.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
You'll get another chance. You're already 3-0 up. It doesn't really matter. Or you will be 3-0 up very soon. So trying to seek out, Bournemouth and Palace were definitely 2 of the top 3 in terms of the most penalties in the past maybe 5 years, which is just astounding, really, when you think about it.
What throws it into stark contrast to what happens in the week, isn't it, against Red Star Belgrade? And we get 2 penalties. We all come out of the ground feeling a bit guilty about those penalties. They are actually penalties. I mean,
the fouls in the penalty area.
The fouls in the penalty area. I mean, without sparking a whole VAR thing, they don't have VAR in the week, but they have the extra official. And I think the referee, when you've got the extra official, and VAR is like having an extra official, the referee can't quite referee within the context Neil's describing, going, I create the narrative here. I'm the one who wants to make this fair, because he's got to look somebody else in the eye and somebody else in the eye. And I think that's what's needed in our game. It is a bit mad.
On the team selection, Chris, it's interesting the changes the manager makes. So that he goes Lallana in for Shaqiri, he goes Moreno in at left back, and he goes with Lovren centre half, rests Gomez. Doesn't rest any of the front 3. Why do you think he doesn't rest any of what we call the front 3?
I think it's about that great unknown tangible of momentum, and I'm not really a believer of momentum as because you can't really quantify it, but I do feel. So you look at the previous couple of games, and Mohamed Salah scored at Huddersfield. He's played well against Red Star. We can't really leave him out because it doesn't really make sense. Look for Roberto Firmino. He always plays better from the start for me. He's almost a non-entity as a substitute a lot of the time, PSG aside. You remember the West Brom game last season away from home. He came on and he was a detriment to Liverpool. A detriment to Liverpool. It was a minus mark. And then you've obviously got Sadio Mane, who missed a penalty but scored against Red Star Belgrade, but he's finally broken that duck. So I think it's all about for Jurgen Klopp about just that confidence, that finally showing that front 3, finally showing that confidence. That's why I think that he kept the front 3. Well, that's why he brought the front 3 back against Red Star, because he thought this was an opportunity to get a few goals and this long-awaited click that everybody's waiting for this season. They did it against Red Star, so it would be detrimental to take them out and shuffle it around again against the Cardiff side. Also, Arsenal's 7 days away, so they've got plenty of time to rest, recover. If you can play the strongest front 3, go for it.
Yeah, and I think also that there's still doubts about Liverpool's midfield creativity, and you're looking for the thrust, the ingenuity really to come from the front 3 players, and that's been the case all season. All of them have struggled a little bit individually, and I think that, although Chris said they're getting a little bit of that fluency back, I still feel there's a little bit of a sense of them all playing separately. They're still not quite clicking as a unit. You seem to be getting moved around a little bit. On Saturday, I thought Salah seemed to be the mainly central player. Whereas in midweek, I thought Firmino was excellent in a more of a traditional centre-forward role. I think that's where he operates best. So I think just by playing them through this period, getting them all into peak form, there's going to be stiffer tests ahead. And equally, there's still this concern, isn't there, about breaking teams down. And if you leave one of those players out and it gets to an hour and you're still not in front, then again, as Chris says there, bringing Firmino on, does he influence the game in the same way? And also still doubts about Sturridge's effectiveness from the start. He's been mostly effective as a sub. So I think Klopp is going to play his front 3 more or less relentlessly as the season wears on. I don't really think that's going to change.
I think the key factor is just the spread of games here. I think he's been able to manage this phase really, really well. He's made nice little changes here and there. I think what might have influenced his thinking is it quietly went unnoticed amidst all the sort of concern around injuries. In the international break, most of our main lads only play a solitary game. So in that week, that fortnight, there was only a game in between our two games. You know what I mean? So it's not like we've been playing every. Salah and Mane and Firmino haven't actually with resting, haven't been playing every 3 days now for weeks on end. That just simply isn't the case. And as Chris says, there's another full week to Arsenal. It actually would have been pointless resting them. I think the restings he does do is Andy Robbo, who's played every single game, full stop. So somewhere he's got to get a break, and he plays twice in the international phase. Gomez, again, he has had injury concerns. You've got to take a chance every now and again and rest him. And Lallana, you want to play back into form. So I can see that.
I was about to say, do you think, Rob, there's something in the lads he goes with? He wants to get Lallana playing. He starts him and he actually gives him longer, which we'll come on to against Huddersfield. But he wants to get Lallana playing. I think Robertson could just be, I need to drop him out. But he clearly wants to feel like Lovren's an option. He starts Lovren against Manchester City. The idea Lovren ends up going elongated periods without kicking a ball. It might be that he's, for instance, not planning to start him against Arsenal, at which point he's then going to start him against Red Star. But if he doesn't play this one, I mean, just that gap's 10 days. So he may well be thinking, I need to keep these lads with some degree of rhythm of playing football.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a situation which is where we've always wanted to be, past the first 11. And although I think Gomez and Van Dijk are the men, or Gomez in Gomez's case, he's the man in possession of the shirt. I think every Liverpool fan would agree with that right now. Lovren's not light years behind. Shaqiri's not necessarily in Liverpool's best 11 at the moment, although for a lot of people, why not?
To be, though, isn't
why
it?
not? And you can go across the midfield and go, you can pick 5 lads there who say our first 11. So our first 11 has become, I know the cliche, it's a squad game, but often it isn't a squad game. In fact, often you don't have a first 11, you have a best of first 8, 3 who you'll put up with, and then 5 who are a drop down. Now we've got about 14 or 15 who are genuinely interchangeable. I think where you want to be a City is where maybe you get 6, 17 who are interchangeable, but it's a sign of that's where we're going, that's where we come from.
We go 1-0 up, Adam, and I thought we started the game really, really brightly. I thought Liverpool, as I say, up until that kerfuffle after the 1-0 up, the thing that was just in my mind was 3 Cardiff players on the deck at 1-0. Like 3 of them have thrown themselves in. One's got injured, got a little bit of a knock rather than injured in doing so. The other 2 just sort of lying there like, oh God, we've conceded this early. We're in for such a long afternoon. And then it just goes so flat. It just goes so flat.
I last season, I spoke a lot in the games where we dropped points, the games against the likes of West Brom and Everton and that sort of thing, where really you'd feel like we should win, especially after scoring, where we should push on a little bit. And I spent a lot of time theorising that Klopp was trying to get them to learn how to win games without having to go 100 miles an hour every single time. And I think this season we're seeing that come to fruition. Now, we as supporters might be in the ground, watching at home, whatever, wanting to see them scoring 4 in the first half, wanting to go crazy. I think that the stats are proving it as well, aren't they? With the pressing stats, that something like when we're behind or drawing, the pressing is really heavy, and then as soon as we take the lead, the pressing just drops off. The whole intensity of the game drops off, and I think that. I don't think he's got it right yet. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that I thought it was good against Cardiff, but I do think that we're maybe panicking. Not panicking is maybe not the right word, but we're maybe a little bit disappointed in the performances when actually what we're seeing is the players learning how to not go 100 miles an hour.
I would have and do have a little bit of sympathy for that point of view, but the manager, all the way through the first half, was doing that thing with his arms where he does big circles, like "Come on, lads," like raise it all the way through. He just kept doing this every time I looked at him. So that's what you're saying there, that you think they might be going further off the gas than he was.
Exactly. So I think they're not quite getting it yet. I think they understand that they don't have to go full pelt every game, and I do think that the reality is that prior to the match we conceded 3 goals in the league, haven't we? So it's not. The defence is now dependable. So a goal now compared to last season means that we've pretty much won the match. Depending on the opposition and depending on the circumstance, if we were 1-0 up against Arsenal, I'd be a little bit more concerned. But against the likes of Cardiff, I think 1-0 up at home, we've won the match. So they are maybe misunderstanding just how much the manager wants them backing off the pedal. But I do think that we as supporters are wanting to see them go 4, 5, 6-0 up in the first half. But the manager's going, if we go in 2-0 up, that's game done.
It's an interesting balance to strike, isn't it? Because Liverpool, yet again, a goal line clearance away from another goal on 45 yesterday. They seem to have made a real inclination to score late on in the first half, and it does feel like maybe they are trying to manage that first half, get an early goal or get a goal to sort of set themselves and try and get that, try and get one in the last 5 minutes. And I'm thinking of Palace, I'm thinking of West Ham. Was it Leicester as well? That was a 45th minute goal, and then Adam Lallana as well. I mean, it's all ifs and buts, but if that goes and they go in 2-0 up and everybody goes, well, they managed that first half absolutely perfectly. I think he is very mindful of the season ahead, but it is about understanding exactly when to take the foot off the gas. Liverpool, up until about 60 minutes, were on for I think it was the Premier League record for possession ever. I think they were on about 84%, and then it obviously dropped off a little bit after they got the second goal. I just think it's one of those situations where he's looking at what's to come and he just feels like we can't go full pelt. I agree with Adam. It's just about picking your moments not to do that. I think against Cardiff you can afford to maybe go 2 or 3-0 up and then take your foot off the gas, because Liverpool are so much better than Cardiff that they can get that free goal cushion and have 45 minutes off in the second half.
I think it's really difficult to raise yourself against the quality of opposition as well. I mean, Cardiff are so limited in ambition. And Liverpool like to play in bursts, but they don't really get the chance to play in those bursts. Those surges of pace through the middle when you've got such a deep line defence. I mean, they've got absolutely no intent on really sort of getting through the game without just escaping or hiding.
So why not take more chances? Because that was what was frustrating.
There does seem to be a lack of players running through midfield, and there's been quite a lot of disruption in midfield. I mean, some of it's been forced, obviously, with, I think, earlier in the season you had the Keita and Henderson being swapped around. Obviously, both of those are injured, so it's not been a familiar midfield over the last 3 games. And I just thinking back the way the season sort of panned out so far, our best performance, I think, was against Chelsea, where there's a real tempo to the game. So you take that tempo away and you haven't got the ability to counter-attack because you're so dominant, then Liverpool begin to look a little bit more pedestrian. But I think that's just playing within yourself and just controlling games. And I think they did that adequately enough. I think we're all obsessing over results that Manchester City are getting, where they're 3-0 up at half-time, the game's done and dusted. And it colours your perception, I think, of halves where you just go in the 1 goal up.
I'm more, Mike, what I liked about last season with Liverpool, and what I think, and I do take the idea that maybe there's a bit of a thing of we're going to go big to 5 before the break. I think that, Kristian might be right to point that out. But I'm more, forget Man City, I'm more, as ever, really, where this league's concerned, Ferguson United. And Ferguson United could be patient as anything until he went 1-0. But at the best, they'd then be absolutely like rabid dogs until they went 2-0. And that's what was frustrating me was, and when Milner and Shaqiri came on, I thought you saw from Milner and Shaqiri, maybe they both demanded the ball, they both made runs beyond, they both did slightly unlikely things. And I was just watching Liverpool just end up... I felt like Cardiff rope-a-doped Liverpool a little bit. Like they just sort of got them to... They almost managed to cage them. Like we're going to bore you into submission here by doing so little. And it was like Shaqiri and Milner, when they came on, went, well, we're not going to stand for that. We're gonna just do stuff and try stuff and make runs and scream for it. You know what I mean?
I mean, they're both energetic players, and Shaqiri in particular, obviously when he comes on, he grabs the game by the scruff of the neck. There's real intent about him. He wants to get on the ball all the time. That was lacking a little bit in the first half, but I do think it's a question of Cardiff dragging Liverpool down to their level. There's no pace in the game, and I think it's difficult. I mean, Rob and I will go back to seasons, way back when we've won titles. I've seen that game 100 times before.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Mike.
And I took a lot of comfort from it, really, is that Liverpool really played in 2 spurts, the 10 minutes that you described at the start and then the 10 minutes towards the end. And it was only really when Cardiff scored and gave us a minor shock that we suddenly just injected any kind of pace and real sort of desire or concern that we weren't going to win the game. As soon as that passed, we were fine.
Do we feel like the opposition are having an effect on this compared to last season? Because Liverpool's defence was an obvious Achilles heel last season. You'd have teams come to Anfield and think, well, we can score 1 or 2 here. We can get on the front foot, and then the space to play. I'm thinking about the Bournemouth game. I'm thinking a little bit about Watford, albeit Liverpool scored early on. Whereas this season, they know they're not going to get many chances, so it is a case of have what they hold straight from kick-off.
We saw this when Brighton came with Kristian, and Neil, you've talked about this, where people go 1-0 down's not a bad score. Get to 60, 1-0 down. And I think once you're up against teams with that mindset, it's not handy when you score 2. There's a sweet spot of when you should score, when you're laying siege to a team, and it's about 17 minutes, I think. Anything before about 8 is slightly dodgy territory because you've spent all week preparing to score a goal. that, especially in a game like this, Liverpool spend the entire week to score that first goal. And when you accomplish that feat early on, it's difficult. And you're right to compare to the United Ferguson teams. I do think they set out to get the second. I actually think we're quite good at it. But Mike's right. In terms of looking at it from above, from a distance, in the cool light of day, that is a consummate title-winning performance. That I think it's absolutely perfect because we were able to achieve the first objective, and despite being naturally disjointed by the selection, which was necessary, between having to deal with a team that was going to park the bus after it had parked the bus and parked the bus again after we'd scored. And we were able to come again at the key moments in the game through sheer quality. It wasn't like we went up the other end and Coutinho blammed one in from 35 yards. When we decided to score again, we did through quality movement and our top players showing their best. I thought people were almost a bit euphoric after the Spartak Red Star Belgrade performance in the week. I thought this was the more impressive in a certain sense.
I think that point about Coutinho is a really good one because I think last season when we struggled to break down teams, we did depend on somebody doing something pretty magical to give us something. Whereas it felt against Cardiff that we just decided to score a couple. Now, I know obviously you sort of think, well, why not do that in the first half at the second half? But I do think that it was, as Rob says, a matter of playing nice football and putting the ball in the back of the net rather than needing something magical.
I think, look at the second, Mane essentially is trying to do something else. The ball ricochets a bit, he bursts through, and then it's a terrific finish, but it's almost the finish of a lad who's like, I've just had enough of this, I'm blamming it into the bottom corner.
Yeah, it's fair.
I've had enough of this, and I'm just doing that. And my thing is that I can take the first goal comes from waves of Liverpool attacking. The second one comes from a ricochet where we then force it through and put it in the bottom corner. So I take I take the point on the third and fourth, Rob. But, But you're not. My issue with this is you mentioned the Brighton game. Brighton aren't far away from getting a late equaliser. They're not far away from getting a late equaliser because Liverpool haven't gone 2-0 when they've gone 1-0. When they score, I'm not bothered by them scoring. Like, I genuinely was like, yeah, they've got their one and they've got a bit of luck and it's soft, and that was always the way we were going to concede. But there's every chance. What if that Mane shot strikes the post and comes back out, and then they make it 1-1, and now suddenly they've got everything to hang on to again, and that ground feels like a very different place, and those footballers feel like very different footballers. It's a lot harder to go, come on lad, let's go and bring the margin off when you've gone 1-0 to 1-1 than it is 2-0 to 2-1. You know what I mean?
I suppose it depends, as ever, what happens next. On Liverpool sides of the past, we're used to the fact that if they didn't kill off games, they would 3 out of 5 times allow a team back into a game.
They've just had a fortunate-ish victory at 1-0 against Huddersfield.
Yeah,
where they never looked like making it 2.
Yeah, we didn't play well in that game. I mean, that's to me that's a different conversation. That game, and I don't think we played well in that game at all. I thought in the past week, the 2 games at Anfield, we've been not back to our very best, but we've shown that quality we have to be able to take games away from teams at the key moments in those games. As I said, you do have to look at the game as a body of work, and I know there was a point at which we're vulnerable, and I take your point about the Mane goal, but we finished the game so strongly, and they're not 2 fluky goals in extra time. They're just such strong goals of a team that understands what it has to do against a weaker side.
The fourth goal is reminiscent of some of the best football last season. All of a sudden, you've got some space. I mean, Mane's desire really to run, I think it was something like 70 yards to get on the ball on the way to pass from Salah. But again, it's just having that space to operate. The game's completely opened up by then. Cardiff are actually absolutely shattered by that point in the game as well. So there's obviously a lot more space. I think just generally speaking, a 4-1 win at home, you've just got to take it. And Cardiff at home will
be worse days.
There will be worse days, and there's going to be stern tasks ahead. I mean, going to Arsenal next week, I expect Liverpool to suddenly play with a higher tempo, be more convincing, have more intent about them. On Saturday, it was disappointing in the first half. There wasn't that tempo. There was an air of complacency. But again, just to restate, I think that's more down to the quality of the opposition rather than any failings in the Liverpool side.
I think what you saw, to be fair, maybe 2-1 and certainly a 3-1 is maybe what Neil's talking about, and the fact that the game is stretched. And if Liverpool can get that second goal early on, the game all of a sudden is stretched from 15, 20 minutes in, and Liverpool can... It's not about goal difference at the moment. I mean, that's a conversation for me. It's just about getting that feeling of putting the ball in the back of the net, and that's ultimately what Liverpool need to do if they're going to win this Premier League.
Yeah, I think that there's lots of truth in all of that. I think, and I think you're absolutely right about it's not about goal difference at this point, but it's also I was quite surprised. We're only 7 behind City, I think, goal difference wise. I thought
They
the way
haven't
people were
played, though,
reacting.
tonight,
Well,
right?
no, but
yeah.
you know, I still think. Famous last words, but I don't think that this Tottenham will concede 5 or whatever it was, and I think the Wembley pitch isn't going to let City play the glorious way that they want to. But the way people have been going on about goal difference, I thought we were about 20 behind them.
Yeah.
But I think when you bear in mind the teams we've played and the teams they've played,
Absolutely.
I think only being 7 behind them actually isn't that bad, because we've got all of those dross teams to come.
But also, Adam, I mean, I think we would all agree around the table right now that we can be 20 behind them, but if we're level on points with them with 4 games to go, we'd all take that. We'd all take that. Level on points with them, 4 games to go, and 20 goals behind them. All right, sound?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I don't know. I think it's just really interesting to see how this develops, and I think Chris's point before about the goal towards the end of the half. It feels at the moment like Klopp's sort of saying, I want you to come in 2-0 or more at half time. I'm not really bothered how. You go out and do it. It feels a little bit like that, so that they're playing within themselves, and then they're getting to 5 minutes before half time and going, "Oh, we're still only 1 here. We better push on for the last 5."
Playing within themselves, Mike. I think you can make an argument that Mane, Salah, Firmino, they can play within themselves. You can maybe make an argument that at the minute, Gini Wijnaldum can play within himself. Virgil van Dijk can play within himself. Lallana hasn't got that luxury for me. He's a footballer that's trying to find himself at the minute and find his place back in this team.
Yeah, I mean, he's never been a player that's been blessed with a lot of pace, nice on the ball. In an ideal world, it would be good to think of him as an option that we can drop into midfield all through the season. He has been out a hell of a long time, and I think it was January before he was reintroduced last week that he played a league fixture. But he sort of feels a little bit like yesterday's man in this team. Even last season when Liverpool were playing fast attacking football, he's good in one sense in that he can slow the game down when you need a little bit of possession, when you're under pressure, when you want to take a little bit of time out of the game. But when you're looking for that extra degree of tempo, that surge of pace, he just hasn't got it. He never really had it. But his ability to drive through that middle third of the field seems to have just eluded him. That could be just down to lack of confidence. He feels like he's playing his way back. 60 minutes is important at this stage, but there is a sense that we've seen the best of Adam Lallana, I think. And it's just a question of really playing in games like that where you can probably just get away with somebody who's just not operating at full pelt.
I think if he's 23, you give him the year. He's been out for best part of 18 months. He's
pushing 30.
Yeah, I think he's 30 now. Yeah. He's been out for best part of 18 months. It's unreasonable for us to expect us to get peak Adam Lallana back now. And that's not actually to do with his age, just because it's what it takes. I mean, Joe Gomez is world class at the moment after his year out with the ligament injury. He barely looked an under 23 player for 6-8 months. He really, I mean, and in the FA Cup games he was blooded in. You couldn't believe that he would go back to his former trajectory. Lallana, it's just whether he's going to be afforded the luxury of the year of rehabilitation, whether he's going to get enough football. And by the time he has completed it, he may find himself heading towards 32. And the squad moving on and on. So it's unfortunate for him. I'm not writing him off too much. I mean, I thought there was at times where people were seeing him as becoming the most important player on our side, and I was sort of slight over-egging it. He was never near the level of our front 3 or front 4. But I still think he's got a role to play here. I think it's useful that we've got players now coming in his position like Shaqiri and Naby Keita, so we can bed him in or do without him.
I agree completely with Mike's point about he feels like yesterday's man. I think this football team has evolved past him now. I think when he was at his best was when it was the pressing Liverpool team that was, that was closing down and he was leading the press and everyone talked about how important he was and blah, blah, blah. Whereas this team now at its best feels like a counter-attacking team more than anything else. And it feels like one where pace is crucial. And he's never had pace. So I don't know how he gets up to speed with this team because he's not going to suddenly find pace with every... I can tell you, I'm not getting any faster as I get older, so I don't imagine he is. So I think there was that moment, wasn't there, with there was a counter, and I think it was Mane and Salah bursting forward, and the pass was made to Lallana, and everything stopped dead because he just didn't have the pace to keep up.
It's the getting away from people thing, which I think 3 years ago, Chris, the criticism was he does find it a little difficult to get away from people. Now it gets harder and harder, and so the other thing I think as well is that idea of sort of getting a run of games to get back into his legs. I remember last season he starts at Burnley, and I think he does quite well. I thought he did all right at Huddersfield, to be honest with you. He starts at Burnley, and I thought he did quite well. But then the next game was the derby against Everton in the Cup, where he was pretty anonymous, and then he struggled to get himself back, and another couple of a knock here and there. It's the idea of, you know, how does he build a foundation to spring from if he is going to do that now?
He's ultimately a squad player now, and I know Jurgen Klopp would say that there are no squad players and everybody's got an important role to play, but you only have to look at the fact that he was obviously very much in for Nabil Fekir in the summer. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is his long-term option in that midfield situation, and you just feel, even if Adam Lallana does get up to speed this season, then hopefully Oxlade-Chamberlain will be back next season. Liverpool will probably have added that Coutinho replacement that was meant to be Fekir. Where does that leave him then? So can Liverpool necessarily afford to spend a year on a project getting Lallana back up to fitness that and produce the performances that he can, when they might ultimately be the ones to benefit long term?
Can I ask you a mean question?
Go on.
Would you rather Curtis Jones started that game against Cardiff City than Adam Lallana?
Not at the moment, no. Not at the moment. I can see where you're coming from, and I am probably Curtis's biggest advocate, but I just feel like there is still a Premier League title to win, and ultimately throwing in a 17-year-old there is not the time to do it, even against Cardiff at home.
Okay. The sub, I'll come back to actually, Chris, as I've asked you a mean question last year, a lovely one. The sub where he brings Shaqiri on, there was two things I noticed on this. One was he sent 3 of them out to warm up at half time, which he doesn't do very often. Normally they're all in the dressing room together, which again I think maybe visits the idea that he was looking to do it. The other thing that happens as well is he's trying to do a bang on the hour, which again you don't see very often. It felt very much like something's been said somewhere, like he's getting 15 minutes here before I change it, and there it was. And then, as I said before, I thought the difference between not just Shaqiri and Lallana, but Shaqiri and what it felt like most of Liverpool's other mid players who end up playing in the middle of the pitch, and so I don't just include midfielders, was the sheer eagerness from Shaqiri to want the football at all times.
Yeah, he's a buzzsaw, isn't he? He's just like a little Rottweiler, just rabid sometimes, and he is playing, and it does sound quite cliche, but he's playing like a player who has almost got his final chance at a big club here, and he's going to seize it as much as possible. I think he's more than aware of the things that people have said about him in the summer.
Me?
Charlie, Adam and you. I mean,
the only thing me and Charlie have got in common.
What company?
That and love a fried egg on a lasagna.
So I think he's well aware of that. I also think he's probably enjoying playing in a good football team. Bear in mind, he's had for the past 3 or 4 years, he's had Mark Hughes as a manager, he's had Paul Lambert. He's probably just enjoying playing for a manager who's actually, quite intelligent, knows exactly how to get the best out of him, and has given him specific instructions rather than just, you stand on that wing, we'll give the ball to you, and you just whip it in onto that big fella's head. I just feel like he's relishing the fact that he's 26 years of age and he's actually got instruction and a plan going forward in his career now.
I think Klopp's done a job on a number on him psychologically, where he's relaxed him and energised him in equal measure. I think he's told him, you're not going to dislodge my front 3 as a first 11 player, but you're going to play an awful lot of football, and I really believe in you, and I've followed you since Munich, and I know you can contribute to this team. How much is dependent on you? And I think Klopp's delivered that message, and you just see the look on his face from the day he walked through the door here. That's what he's bought into.
Just before he scores, he tiptoes through midfield, trying to jump on his back and everything to stop him. There's a really straightforward ball to feed Mane and put Mane in, to be honest with you, Mike, and he doesn't play it. And then he tiptoes through the penalty area in exactly the same way he just tiptoed through the midfield. So it is, it's a rough with smooth sort of scenario with him every now and again there. But it was a lovely goal, and it was rewards as much for the work he's done in all the games leading up to this point as it was for the work done in this game, I felt like. And it was nice he got it in front of the Kop, and it was nice. I was actually pleased to see him turn around, do the thing where he points to his name on his back. You know what I mean? He deserves that for everything he's done so far.
Yeah, he's got a real presence about him. I like the way he plays with his head up. When he gets on the ball, he's all about vision and guile and creativity. He can see it pass probably better than any player in this Liverpool side. And I think there's a case really for in that type of home game when you're gonna get that amount of possession, very little threat from the opposition for him starting, because he gives the midfield a completely different look and far more creative feel. I think where we struggled in the early part of the season when people were beginning to obsess over the fact that we haven't quite hit our straps, the midfield was purely functional. And I said at the start of the season when he came in, with people talking about him being this auxiliary striker, I never really saw him in that sense. I prefer him coming from deep, where he's got the whole game in front of him, because he's just got that ability to see passes. Obviously, the goal itself, it just shows how devilish he can be in the box, and that body sweat. I mean, not many players have got that, and the precision of the finish as well. I mean, he's a brilliant addition, and I think of all the players that Klopp has signed, given that Kaiser's being out with injury, he's the one that's pressing to become more of a first team regular rather than someone who just comes in from time to time.
Milner, I think, impresses as well, but I want to talk about the central midfield too in a minute, Adam. But Milner, you got to see, again, he does it for Firmino, which I thought was interesting. He does it again, bang on 70, which is not very Klopp-like. It feels either programmed or, again, as though something's been said in the dressing room, like, this is what I'm going to do here at half-time. But Milner comes on, and while he goes into, obviously Firmino, in theory, we've took an attacker off, but I just thought we just seemed more dangerous from the point that Milner came on. We seem to have someone arriving rather than someone already being present, if you know what I mean. And Cardiff were quite happy to deal with people who were present, but didn't like the idea of movement.
Yeah, and I think from the player's point of view, if you're sitting in the stands and going, this is really frustrating, we should be taking the game, we should be really trying to force the issue here, then I can't imagine how professional footballers must be thinking, God, if I was on the pitch, why aren't they running at them? Why aren't they attacking them? Why aren't they putting the defence under pressure? So it does make complete sense that the two subs who come on do exactly that and do it in a really straightforward manner. Just to nip back to Shaqiri for 1 minute, before he did the little point to the back thing, one of the things that I really enjoyed was he pointed straight to Salah for the ball, like a real kind of, me and you, we did that together type thing, which I think is a sign of he's a player that was playing with god-awful players at Stoke, and now he's come here and he's playing with loads of people, and he doesn't have to do it all himself anymore. But Milner, I think, is just that he's the sort of player who, he's just an incredibly intelligent footballer, and he's a footballer that has played also played with a lot of good players throughout his career, and knows how to work in a way that will help people get the best out of them. And actually, Firmino. I've got a theory that the reason Liverpool's attack is really not clicking at the moment is because Firmino's not clicking for some reason. I don't know what's going on with him, but it feels like something's not clicking with him.
Yeah.
And Milner came on and almost did the sort of stuff that Firmino was doing last season, if you see what I mean, and moving into spaces that defenders don't really want him to move into because they're going to. He then occupies them. So it was really good to see them both come on and go, this is what you should have been doing for the last hour or hour and 10 minutes or whatever, and then doing it.
Do you think Firmino struggles against the poorer opposition?
I don't. I think he's struggling.
He's certainly got more. They tend to double up on him a lot, don't they? So he's being denied space. He wants to forage, and that's why I think you see him drop deep quite regularly. He seems to be dropping deeper this season than last when he was operating as a bona fide centre forward. And I think just seeing him in those deeper areas is just his way of trying to escape the attention that he's been given by this sort of mass defence and two defenders on him at once. Yeah,
I think there's something in that. I mean, he's played the game at a great intensity now for a number of months, and in the World Cup's there's no respite there, and a couple of weeks or so off afterwards. If ever there's a case for doing an Alex Ferguson saying just go to the beach for another 3 weeks, we'll see if we can find the right little run of fixtures, and think we probably could. I think he almost needs that. He's amazingly still managing to keep his hand in with a goal here or there, but he hasn't been the same force. There's no hiding that.
I think there's also a change of system, which doesn't necessarily play to his strengths here. I think if Liverpool are going to this double pivot 4-2-3-1, that they're going for, he's almost playing as a number 10 as it is, with Salah advanced from him. And it just feels, if you take away that 4-3-3, that is ultimately what he was last season. He was the leader. He was what Lallana was a couple of seasons ago. Leader of the press, the person who basically initiates all the attacks. If you move him out of that position, he's not necessarily the greatest goal scorer, which sounds crazy because he scored 27 last season, but he's not that typical number 9 that system maybe needs and deserves.
I think he's being played differently. I commented earlier in the season, I thought Brighton almost built a little pentagon, something that was used in witchcraft. Pentagon is the shape. They built a little pentagon around him where there's the two centre-halves, there's two holders, and even the lad who plays in front, they're blocking the pass into him. But the other thing I was thinking about, and Stu Wright mentioned to me on text after the Cardiff game, is this idea that he plays on the centre-half, he moves to create space, gives the centre-half a question to answer. I wonder, Chris, if the opposition defenders have answered that question pre-match, where they've gone, don't go with him.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't go with him.
Yeah, if he goes for a little wander, you just stay where you are, and then he's in space on the left-hand side. What's he going to do? So the fullback comes to him, for example, and so if he beats the fullback, but then he's got two centre-backs and another defensive player to beat. So I think there's, teams have had a season to not work Liverpool out, because Liverpool have won 8 and drawn 2, but they've had a season to watch them and
to work out their plan to deal with Liverpool.
Exactly, and people talk about Liverpool in general and their sort of maybe stunted start of the season. At times, we've got to remember that there's a year's worth of evidence here to work with for opposition sides.
He's not ahead of the play the way he was last year. You might make the point about being deeper, and I do think that's true. And you said with the 4-2-3-1 system, but even when we haven't played that, though, he's not ahead of the play. I can only think of Tottenham having really arriving in the 6-yard box. But we talk about him being first in the press. Most of his pressing actually was coming from behind the man as they were coming out. Firmino would be snapping at people's heels. He wasn't facing goal when he's facing his own goal whilst pressing and nicking balls away from people. So he is deeper, and I think there's truth in everything that's been said here. I think people have sat down and go, "There's a secret to Liverpool. We let the fullbacks have the ball last year, and that didn't work." Shutting down the wide areas, and for example, Trent's being shut down a lot this season. That's why it's all coming through Andy Robbo, I think. And I think shutting Firmino out, putting Firmino out of business is possibly the next big move. But I do think there's an energy issue here as well.
It does sort of remind me of the idea that the way you stop Cristiano Ronaldo was to stop people passing to him. The way you stop Mo Salah is to stop Roberto Firmino getting on the ball. Could well be something that's gone through some analysts' minds over the summer. Their goal, Mike, is... it's all right for it to be one of them. I'm not at all grumpy about their goal. I think that, literally you play endless games of football. Occasionally something like this might have happened. It was always likely to be the sort of goal that we concede in the league. If it wasn't going to be someone like Man City pulling us apart against a poorer side, it was always going to be something that looks a bit like that, or is a 25-yard thunderbolt. It wasn't likely to be anything else.
It was a bit scruffy. I mean, you're not going to go through a whole season without conceding a goal at some point, and goals just happen from time to time. I actually think one of the things that hasn't been picked up on much in the press and analysis over the weekend is I actually think Van Dijk's a little bit sloppy with the intervention, deflects it into the fella's path. I just think he reacts a little bit slow. And thinking back to last week's game against Huddersfield when a cross evades him as well, we get caught up in the Van Dijk thing, and he's imperious on the ball. So, in the first half on Saturday, he was the person that sort of gave me a bit of a highlight in the way that he was ambling forward and getting involved in the attack. But
both centre-halves.
All defenders do make mistakes, and as I say, I just thought he was a little bit slow to react to the way the ball came across. Although Moreno, again, without wishing to get on his back, he has a nice run out. But his decision to sort of go in for a ball that wasn't quite there was what precipitated that in the first place.
I think that's fair, but I do think that we see both Trent and Robertson do that every single week, running in to get a ball, and then it's not quite there. It makes it past them, but it's cleaned up, so we never talk about it. And because it's Moreno, it becomes a thing where, he's jumped in there, he's ran in. Well, the other defenders do it all the time because Klopp wants them to get the ball, because if they get it, if he got it there, we're on the counter straight away. And we see it week in, week out with the other fullbacks that play, but we never talk about it because when they make a mistake or when they don't get the ball or whatever, somebody cleans up. I completely agree with you about Van Dijk, and I think there's got to come a point at which people, after we can accept that he is easily our best defender, arguably one of the best defenders in the world, and sometimes does something a bit shit. And because I've seen people bend over backwards to defend him for that. So the ball went too fast. He couldn't possibly see it. Blah blah blah. He's just a bit lazy with it, and he's done that a couple of times. There's been things where he's just been a little bit. And the thing is, that is part that not the lazy, but the sort of chilled out attitude is part of what makes him such a brilliant central defender. But then sometimes there'll be occasions when that chilled out nature means he doesn't quite get a foot on the ball, and I think that he's just a bit sloppy with it, because I think he's got a bit, they're never scoring, are they? Because they haven't even been in our box yet. So what they're going to do? And I think it's like a comedy of errors that Moreno jumps in because that's what the fullbacks have been doing from time to time. He doesn't get the ball. The goalkeeper maybe could do a bit better. It feels a little bit like it goes between his arms. I don't know. I've seen other people say there's nothing he could do, so I'm not going to nail me colours to the mast on that one. But it just feels like it's a goal that comes. And the frustrating thing about it is, why did it have to be a dreadfully shite Cardiff team that are the ones that score the goal at Anfield when we played Man City and survived a penalty scare? That's where you're a bit like, oh, fuck off.
But we won. So,
well, exactly.
It's good for the other end.
I mean, on Van Dijk, I just feel like that's probably one of Klopp and his training staff's biggest remit is just to make sure he's engaged for 90 minutes, because when the game comes so easily to somebody, it can be natural to switch off. As you say, he's probably thought, I've had these in my back pocket all day. I haven't even broken a sweat. Oh, it's 2-1. It's just that sort of thing with Van Dijk. No concerns over him.
Would you attack him? Like if you were to sell your Arsenal next weekend, let's say you were going to play Gomez and Van Dijk, where on the pitch would you attack?
I can see why you're saying this. I'd probably go for Gomez in the hope that Van Dijk is going to try and clean up alongside him and then utilise the space that Van Dijk vacates. But there's also an argument there, if you're Arsenal, get Lacazette and Aubameyang around Van Dijk, because he won't have had two players of that quality around him for a very long time coming at him.
I have a thing that that Van Dijk so much wants to play on the cover that's his game. That I think I've seen a lot of sides now come up against us and think Trent, he's a 19-year-old fullback. Gomez/Lovren, well, Lovren's got a mistake in him. Gomez, what's all that about? And they go down that side, and that sort of means that you're creating down that side and looking for people to arrive on the other side. For me, it's no accident Napoli's goal is created on their right, our left, and finished going the other way. Almost have the idea of flip what's the usual way of going about things. If I was setting up a good side to play against Liverpool, I'd have the idea of see if you can cause them problems down their left and then capitalise on the right. Whereas I think most sides come to faces, they do the opposite. But I think that plays into both Van Dijk and Robertson's ability to play brilliantly on the cover, and plays onto the idea that Gomez actually wants to engage you, if you know what I mean. I'm just intrigued. Go on.
I don't know. We were previewing Arsenal now. I was just remembering that Emery's the guy who works us out at half time in Basel and works out what to do to Liverpool side.
Attack down the left hand side within 18 seconds as well.
I think it really depends how bold he wants to be. Does he want to commit numbers against us? I think you can test the best defenders in the world, and Van Dijk is one of the very best defenders in the world if you're prepared to do it with numbers. They might have had a little look at Liverpool and go, everyone thinks, the adage is that Liverpool are vulnerable in the air. They just aren't vulnerable in the air. We're scoring more from set pieces than anyone else, and Van Dijk will head balls away all day long. So don't put it in the air. Get it on the deck. Maybe try and pin the centre-halves down with the two centre-forwards and try and run in behind Ozil and others and midfielders. Maybe that's the way to do it. But Liverpool can go the other way, and that's what they've got to think about.
It was nice for Arsenal to drop points just going and talking about other sides. Mike, nice that Liverpool get the fourth, by the way.
Rob and I were talking about this before. It was... had they won yesterday, they'd have been going into next week's game thinking that they can actually overtake us in the league, which would have felt slightly uncomfortable for us going into that. Would have given them real sort of ambition going into the game. So handy. But I think Liverpool, as I said before, you see the true mettle of this Liverpool team when they're up against superior opposition. I expect us to go there and take the game to Arsenal, get on the front foot. Arsenal look quietly impressive without actually playing anyone of any real repute of late. And I think going into next week, I think it's a much stiffer test for them going forward as well as at the back.
I think this is Liverpool defence's hardest test so far this season, harder than City and harder than Chelsea, just because I feel like it's set up to deal with teams like Chelsea and City as best they can. I just think like Arsenal going forward is just disorganised chaos, and it's Liverpool can deal with an Aguero because they know exactly what he's going to do. He does it very, very well, but they know what they're getting from it because they know Pep Guardiola's got this plan. Likewise, Sarri with Hazard, etc. With Arsenal, it just feels at the moment a little bit like Liverpool 2013-14, where it's just we don't know what's going to happen, but we get the ball to that front two. Ozil's pulling the strings behind. You got Ramsey running in. Absolutely anything could happen, and that's where Liverpool are probably going to have their biggest test so far.
They've dropped points, though, Adam, this weekend, which I said before is nice. Chelsea don't let them go in anywhere. It is, it's Burnley away on paper difficult to have vanquished them as emphatically as they did. It suggests that maybe Burnley are sort of finding this season a little bit tougher than some would have expected. But for instance, I'm not looking forward to us going there midweek in December. I'm looking forward to going to Burnley, but I'm not looking forward to that game and the way in which it'll play out. I think there is, Chelsea look like they're certainly going to be able to trade blows for a while into this season, and they win at the weekend without Hazard.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating how much, as football fans, and I wonder how much football clubs do it as well, that you hold on to the idea from last season of what a football club is. I think Burnley's a really good example of that. That last season they were just, they were grinding out 1-0s, weren't they? They were defensively solid and blah blah blah. This season they have not looked good at all, and I think that Europa League campaign has really caused them a lot more problems than they thought it would, and so they haven't got into the swing of things yet. It's never a fun place to go, but when you're seeing Chelsea put, what was it, 4, 5 past them? I can't remember what it was for. 4 past them. You're thinking, well, maybe they're all right. Now, I agree. I think, as with so many other things, it's the timing of when it happens, isn't it? December isn't going to be a fun time to go there because it's going to be frigging freezing, and nobody's going to be particularly enjoying themselves and all that sort of stuff. It's interesting with Chelsea. I expected it to take a lot longer for Sarri to get what he wanted them to do going, actually, and I'm intrigued that they've clicked as quickly as they have. And whereas Arsenal, I think Arsenal are a lot like us at the start of last season, where they're electric going forward, but they are all over the show at the back. And I'm really interested to. I think in what I was saying before about Klopp seems to be teaching them how to win without having to go 100 miles an hour. I think our best performances have come against Spurs and PSG, because they're two teams where you have to be on it from the word go to get a result against them. And I thought we were brilliant against Spurs. We could have been 4-0 up at half time. It was really ridiculous that we didn't win.
Really
by
fair
more.
comment.
City, I think, was a bit of it was a Curatek of a match all round because of both teams, the way they played. So I'm not quite saying that, but I still thought we were on it. I think it was a fast game, and I think we were good. But and I actually think Mike was right before when he said about the Chelsea game as well. Against the top teams, we're going into it playing electric, and keeping the pace up for the whole match. It's the lesser teams that we're dropping off when we've already got the lead. So I'm excited about the Arsenal match, because I agree with Mike. I think we'll take the game to them, and I'm interested to know whether their defence can handle it.
I think there's a key point to which you play all teams. The proverbial "there's a good time to play people" is absolutely huge. I often look at teams on momentum, and I think we've got them in a month. Let them just pull up short a week or two before they play us. I think that was a gift from the gods, what happened at Palace there. And I may live to regret these words, but I think that equaliser by Palace is the moment that secures our win at the Emirates next week.
I'll tell you what, excellent
tempting
stuff,
the fucking fate.
You're tempting all the fate in the world, all the fate in the world. They've got a week to prepare, Rob, for that Arsenal game as well. I think that's another thing to point out, and it's difficult, to be fair to Fabinho and Wijnaldum, because Cardiff did not want midfield to exist against us, which is a way to play football, I suppose. They didn't want midfield to exist particularly. It's also interesting that they rested. Well, they said Arta had a knock, but I suspect if it was next week's game this week, Arta would have been fit enough to have played. I think they've cotton wooled him for I think they've got Leicester or Brighton at home next week. There's something in it being difficult to discuss Wijnaldum and Fabinho in the context of the game because of the way in which it played out. I didn't feel it was quite as exciting as it had been against Belgrade.
Yeah, I agree. But possibly it was, as you said, it wasn't really the game for that. For Fabinho, it was a bit after the Lord Mayor's show, wasn't it? He was buzzing, but yet not quite let off the leash enough. And Wijnaldum was sort of slightly moved, I thought, from his best position as the singular pivot. And no, I don't think that it's hard. I mean, I think in those sort of roles, you can't look like a Rolls Royce every week. Sometimes you just go through the motions. We're looking for problems that aren't there. I thought they're both fine. I mean, if Henderson and Milner get through a game like that and you go, did you notice them? No, great, we won.
But my flip side question becomes, do you expect Henderson and Milner to start against Arsenal?
I don't know the context of the
Milner definitely starts against Arsenal, I think.
Yeah, I think if you ask Klopp, it's the last game on planet Earth and you've got to win it, and who's your best number 6? I think he goes on current form, it's Gini Wijnaldum. So I think he'd probably go, but then again, he's playing a top side, so he wants security. So if Henderson's fit, and that is an if at this stage, if he feels Henderson trains all week, looks great, then I think he goes Henderson, Milner and Wijnaldum. He goes for security. He goes for the things that served us well earlier in the season.
And the thing that served us well at the end of last season.
Yeah, I think at the highest level.
I think he goes European away, and just we're going to hunt them if Henderson's fit. City Spurs tonight, so we're recording this well in the morning. I asked this question last week. I'm going to ask it again. You can play God. What do you want the score to be?
Well, definitely want Spurs win, don't we?
Spurs win?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want a Spurs win.
Yeah.
7-0 Spurs.
7-0 Spurs. Excellent stuff.
Breaks City spirit a bit. Yeah, I like
I've
it.
seen the pitch.
The pitch looks tremendous.
What's happened to it? Is it American football?
It's American football.
Yeah.
Because the Tottenham Stadium wasn't built in time. They've had to have 3 NFL games on consecutive weekends getting played there. The last one, which was Sunday, and it just looks like a plough field right through the middle, which is obviously very disappointing for Pep Guardiola when his side play all the way through the middle.
Well, it was interesting with that when we went there, I thought Tottenham were really direct against us, and I think that's only going to intensify.
Yeah, I think it's City have got the second shortest pass distance this season and the most passes, whereas Tottenham are like 5th and 5th. So it's very much a different two different styles. Two different styles coming up against each other. Really looking forward to watching that one tonight. Obviously, I mentioned in passing there, I did mention Leicester City. Everyone in football is thinking about them. There's a very nice statement from Liverpool Football Club's owners on the Liverpool website, which is worth looking at if you're looking for people who voice the right sentiments and do it very, very well. That's there for you if you want to see that sort of thing, and more information is going to come out, and we'll be talking to somebody, I think, as the week wears on the Anfield Wrap. All the shows are available for you this week, £5 a month. If you want to listen to our subscribing material, we'll have Coach Holmes. We've got a review of Liverpool versus Cardiff, and then we're going to be beginning to look at Arsenal, which feels like an enormous fixture next weekend. 5:30 kickoff for that one, Arsenal versus Liverpool. Just a quick man of the match.
I'm going Manny purely because he scores 2 goals.
2 goals is a thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was Mo Salah, but I think he played very, very well. We haven't had time to talk about it, but he was
poaches instinct back again.
I just think everything he did. I think his link play, everything he did. I think he was quietly brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I would give a shout out to Shaqiri though, because I just think he's really. I think one of the things that I had a chat with Mo Stewart on Twitter, and what he was saying about one of the things that's slowing us down is moves breaking down. Because passes are just being overhit and underhit, and Shaqiri seems to be hitting, 90% of his passes perfectly weighted. So, a special commendation.
Chris?
Salah, just because he looked a little bit more like the Salah of last season, floating around, popping up left, right. But I did like Mane's finish for the fourth. He hasn't really busted out that finish for Liverpool yet, so he's unlucky there.
And his other finish. There were great finishes, weren't there?
Great finishes.
Yeah, kicking the ball in the goal hard. Always is worth something. The most underrated thing in football. Thank you very much to Mike, to Rob, to Adam, and to Chris. It has been your Anfield Wrap in association with RedsBet this week. Take it easy.